Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Daily Palace podcast. I'm your host Finn Bowden and today I'm joined by Alex Waite. How you doing, Alex?
Hey Finn, yeah, all good, thanks. All good to be back on the pod after what seemed like an eternity of an international break. So good to be back and talking about Crystal Palace and the Premier League.
And we're also joined by Wale Bakare, who's dialing in all the way from Nigeria. This is like how dedicated he is to the Daily Palace podcast. He's like, so if we lose him at any point, it's because of a dodgy internet connection. But Wale, how are you doing, brother? Tell us. No, you'll have to enjoy the heat for all of us, mate. Yeah, the weather in the UK, very, very windy and cold. And so you lightly touched upon it just then, the Palace's game against Villa at Villa Park at the weekend. So, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Because some would say that was 2 points lost and some would say that's a point gained. So obviously the score was 2-2. Ismail Assar and Justin Devaney getting his first goal for Palace. And then unfortunately just Palace, sort of bit of the story of our season, just unable to hold on defensively and conceding 2 goals in that game. But Alex, what are your thoughts? Do you feel like it was a total capitulation? Do you feel like it was disappointing? Or do you feel like Palace really earned that point? Or is it somewhere in between? What are your thoughts?
I think if you think about it before the game, we would have definitely taken a point, would have bitten your hand off to take a point away at Villa, considering how strong they are at the moment. But after the game, I still think I'm happy with a point, even though we gave away the lead twice. I still think a point away at Villa is good. And it's a building block. You know, we're unbeaten now in, I think, 4 of the last 5, which, you know, is all momentum that will help us get out of the bottom 3, which is the immediate task. Just on the game as a whole, though, I think a draw was probably fair. Like, both teams had plenty of chances. And Villa, you know, Watkins did what he does, took it round Hendo and popped it in. And yeah, like Devaney's goal was an absolute peach of a finish. Like that guy is, I'm just thinking about the upcoming games and I'm like, who is going to come in and replace him at the moment? You know, he's a young guy playing out of his boots, going from strength to strength. Some of the other guys have underperformed massively this season. And this guy is like, what is he, 20, 21? And he's coming in and, you know, showing them how it's done, really. Like that run that he made to get on the end of that cross to finish was like, you know, it's the stuff that gets the fans up and gets us going. So I think he's been a real bright spark. And he's someone I'd like to see starting going forward, at least, you know, until he does something that means we drop him, you know. But yeah, I think on the whole, it's another point. We're keeping in touching distance of Ipswich, which is really weird to say, considering
it's far. It just goes to show you, isn't it? Pre-season, even predictions are just such a load of tosh. Like, I mean, if we think back to over the summer, all the grand plans that we had here at the team, and we were discussing, Palace are going to be doing this. We're going to be knocking on the door of Europe, and as you said, we're chasing the tail skirts of Ipswich at the moment. So,
mighty Ipswich,
who also managed to get a point against Man United at the weekend. So another version of the brand new Man United. So obviously, yeah. So some good performances from some Palace players, particularly the goal scorers, Ismail Assar and Justin Devaney, and also a fantastic penalty save. Wale, would you say it's uplifting and a positive to see some players starting to step up and sort of stake a claim in this team now? Even, I suppose, it's not been a great season for Palace so far and there's been lots of injuries, but was it nice to see those positives at the weekend? I think we might have lost Wale slightly. So when he comes back to us. But yeah, Alex, what are your thoughts? Do you feel like it was nice to see the Ismail Assar and Justin Devaney get those good performances under their belt? And also, I mean, it's great to see Dean Henderson doing a slide as well after I think it was the second goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was amazing. you don't see that too often from the goalkeeper, the old knee slide. It's more of a striker's celebration, isn't it?
It is. It's sort of reserved for more of the outfield players, isn't it? Exactly. But I mean, it was a great save from Dean as well.
Yeah, excellent penalty stop. My first worry was that, the rule about jumping off your line might come into play because he sprung forward quite enthusiastically, but to get a palm on it and just get it away is like unreal. But it shows why he is like in the England squad so consistently, and he has made some saves for us this season where it shows the quality that he is. Just like to see him do it a bit more consistently. And I think, for Watkins' goal in particular, he maybe rushed out a bit too eagerly. Could have stayed up for that, but it's nitpicking. I think like he is a great goalkeeper, and there was this, at the start of the season between him and Sam Johnston, it was like I think we've made the right choice on balance. But yeah, and Sarr as well. Like good to see him get on the score sheet. He had against Wolves, he had so many chances, mate, and I was like, who is this guy? Like what? Like I'm really questioning him.
In some excellent positions, and then just was unable to sort of just do the final bit. Yeah, and I think, as you said, he could have easily had a hat trick in that game against Wolves. And
yeah,
I feel like just even that performance by Sarr in that game was indicative of our season. Just close, but just not that good enough to get it over the line.
Yeah, I think hopefully he'll come in. Like now he's got his goal, he'll start scoring regularly. But then we got Eze back, and it's like, do you drop Sarr maybe and keep Devaney because he started in that more attacking role? So Glasner's got some considerations there, but Sarr he's positive, and he's obviously showing glimpses of form, but he's just got to put it in the net. Like same with Nketiah, like they've just got to score more frequently. They get in the right positions, but just want to see that finishing touch,
Absolutely. And I think I've said it just multiple times over the last few weeks, but I feel like as soon as you get that first goal, then suddenly it starts becoming a regular thing. A bit like with Jean-Philippe Mateta. I know that once he scores, usually he tends to go on a bit of a run. Lastly as well, obviously Aston Villa are having a pretty great season especially in terms of their Champions League campaign. It's been a funny old season in terms of team performances and who's beaten who. For example, even Man City now going on is it a 5-game losing streak? I mean, that in itself, we could probably do a whole pod on. But the fact that Palace have had some pretty poor performances against opposition we think we should probably be beating, and then managed to get results against teams like Tottenham, for example, who beat Man City at the weekend. It's kind of interesting that we seem to be getting results against some of the better opposition. And I don't know, what are your thoughts? Is that a positive sign, do you think? Is that a sign that maybe it's close to clicking and it just maybe needs a few more adjustments? Or
yeah, I think you're right. I think with every team we've played other than Fulham, sorry for saying that because I know you went to that game. Yeah, sorry, mate, to bring that up. But other than the Fulham game, it's all been quite even. Like every performance, we've been in it, or it's been like a 1-goal defeat, or very narrow scoreline, or we've had chances and we've just not quite got there. So I think the performances are there, and I think this is why like Parish and the hierarchy have stuck with Glasner because they've seen the same, and it's like we're just like on the edge of this, like doing what we did at the end of last season and going on a run where it all clicks. And it did in the wins against Spurs and Villa, 2 big teams like who are fighting for top 4. It did come together, and it's like, well, if we can compete with them, then we can do it with City and Arsenal, Chelsea, like all the big teams, which we've shown already. But it is very Palace also. Like it's hard to explain that we lose to Fulham at home, but then we'll go and beat Newcastle at home and Man City. Like that is just this thing that we have at Palace, that we do that. So nothing surprises us, like we could have a bad start to the season like we did and then go on a massive winning run. It's just the roller coaster that is Crystal Palace, unfortunately.
As you said, it is very just typical of this club. And as me and you both know, as being fans for however many years, like it's just, I don't see it changing anytime soon. We're just going to take a quick little ad break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about January transfer window. So don't go away. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all these ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Welcome back to the Daily Palace podcast. I am Finn Bowden, and I'm joined by Alex Waite. We did have Wale Bakare, but I think Wale's internet connection out in Nigeria has failed him. So hopefully he's able to rejoin us. But if not, we will persevere on, and hopefully he'll jump back on at some point. But yeah. So obviously, we're now going into December. Alex, there'll be quite a few fixtures before the transfer window in January. But first of all, I'll ask you what I hope is a simple question. But do you think there needs to be major additions to the squad, or do you think it's a case of the squad's actually okay? We just need to wait for some people to come back from injury, and are there other options? What are your thoughts?
It's a bit of an interesting question, this one, because you look at our squad and you sort of think, there's plenty of quality there to at least stay up, which again is like weird to to consider at this point. But when you look at our depth, it's lacking really. Like there's a couple of positions in particular where a couple of players have gone down injured, and you thought, swear word, this is a this is a bit dodgy for us. So you've got like Tyrick Mitchell and Daniel Munoz, who are like the only players who can play in those positions for us, and we have no cover at all for those two. So it's like, you've got Joel Ward who can play there, but it's like we need cover for those two, right? In wing backs, we can't just have fullbacks filling in, or like, these old players in the squad trying to fill that position. So I don't think we need like major adjustments, but I think we do need a bit more depth in certain positions. I think we also need maybe a couple more attackers to challenge the likes of Nketiah and Mateta and push those guys on, because at the moment Mateta's doing all of it, or trying to do all of it to his best abilities. But we need a genuine like challenge for those guys. I think like on the whole we're okay. I think we've got players coming back like Riyad, Wharton, Chris Richards has just come back as well. So we've got fairly good depth, but I think those wing back positions are a major issue we need to address, and maybe in the attack. But I think otherwise I'm quite happy with the squad. I think we should be all right. What do you reckon? What are your thoughts on it?
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think there was quite a lot of investment in the summer, in particular players like Eddie Nketiah, and we haven't really been able to see the best of him yet for a multitude of factors. And it could be a case where it might be a good idea to get competition in for him. But then also, do we want to rule out having... Because I believe that he could... I still think Eddie Nketiah can come good. I think also during the Fulham game, I mean, one of the standout things from that game for me was Daichi Kamada, and not necessarily in a good way. Like, I think he's obviously a really good footballer, and he's been able to have really good seasons in both the Bundesliga and Serie A. But the Premier League is like a different animal, and I just don't know if he has the tenacity and the ruthlessness, I would even say, to sort of play in the Premier League. And I think he's a great footballer. I just don't know if this style of football necessarily suits him. And it's a real shame, because I would love to see it work out for him. But I could also quite potentially see him leaving in January and maybe going out on loan or finding a different club. Because obviously I think we only signed him on a free contract. So as a free agent, so I don't know how that would work particularly. I also said to my dad as well, because he almost just chimes in with this every week. He's like, Raksaki scored again, and it's like
Yeah.
it's. But that being said, I also understand that we could recall him from, I think, Sheffield United, where he's at the moment. But that's no guarantee that he would suddenly start scoring for us in the Premier League. Championship is slightly different, but it would be great if he did. But also, maybe Oliver Glasner doesn't really fancy him that much, or doesn't think he's ready yet. But it would be an option. It would be great to see if Jesserin could come back and contribute a few goals, because I think as you said just now, I think that's our major problem really, is we're not scoring enough and we're conceding too many, which sounds like quite an obvious what not to do in football, but unfortunately that has been the story of Crystal Palace so far in the 24-25 season. Is there one player that realistically stands out for you as a potential signing, like someone that you think from another team, maybe in one of the teams around us in the Premier League or from the Championship, someone you've seen and you've got, do you know what, I'd love to see them playing for us at Palace? Anyone?
Oh, mate, there's so many. There's so
everyone.
Yeah, it's like everyone except our players, basically. It's just like there's so many players we've missed out on, or that we've been linked with, who've gone to other Premier League clubs, especially some of the guys from South London as well, like Emil Smith Rowe, for example, who tore us apart the other week. And it's like, why are we? He comes from Croydon. Like, why are we not trying to get this over the line? Like, and we've got players now like Chalobah, like Nketiah, like Eze, who all grew up in South London. And it's like, we've obviously got a bit of appeal for those kind of players. So it's a shame to miss out on someone like Emil Smith Rowe. But then we have been linked with players who are doing really well and are like the talisman for their team, like Jared Bowen. I think we were linked with Alexander Isak, who faced on Saturday for a bit. And I think, missing out on those players is like a bit of a shame for us. Like, I guess I know there's like an overall financial plan. You can't spend big on some of these players, but they are ones that I look at and I'm like, our fortunes could be a bit different, especially in the post-Wilf era, that we need players who have that confidence. Like, all right, Mateta has his scoring runs, but he's not a like 7 out of 10 every week kind of player, whereas Jared Bowen is, for example, or Emil Smith Rowe is like an 8 out of 10 player every week. Like, they have that level that some of the players that we sign don't have. I think Eze is as well, but he hasn't done it this season really. So yeah, my pick would be Emil Smith Rowe, but obviously he's just gone to Fulham, so we can't have him. That would be a miracle if we signed him, but it won't.
No, I agree. I think, as you said, when I saw we were linked with him over the summer, I was really excited. But then I wasn't that surprised when he went to Fulham, because I just thought financially we weren't going to be able to compete with them. And yeah, maybe they offered him a better contract and better terms than we could. Yeah, I'm trying to think who I would have. Who would I have in the Palace squad at the moment? I'd like some goals. I mean, it's unrealistically, I'd love Erling Haaland, but that's not going to happen.
Oh yeah, maybe on loan in January. Who knows?
Maybe on loan, because to be fair, things aren't going great at City. I don't think they're going that badly. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like even someone like, I'm going to put it out there, maybe someone even like Tammy Abraham to come. But the problem is, I think he really enjoys living in Italy, and he's doing okay with AC Milan as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
But
he was playing tonight. I was watching AC Milan before we came on, and he was. Him and Fiacco Tamori were playing. Two English lads, but yeah, like again, they're two players that would suit us. But I think they're set in Italy, like you said. Like they've been there for a few years, so
it'd be very difficult to persuade someone to leave Italy for Croydon. But I came back from the sunny hills of Barcelona. But so it'd be interesting. But I think realistically, I think we've taken players like Michael Elise and Eberechi Eze from the Championship, so maybe it's a good policy again to have a look at which players are performing well in the Championship. And I think we tend to do well with players as well who've been at other clubs but not sort of broken through and just made. Do you know what I mean? Like with Michael Elise, he had been at Chelsea, had been at Man City. Eze had been at Sunderland, had been at Fulham, then broke through at QPR. So I think it's definitely worth us, and financially probably as well, better for us to look at maybe some acquisitions from the Championship. But then I agree with you. I don't think there has to be drastic changes. I think the injury list with some of those players returning, I think it's a different story for our season and for results over the next few weeks. We're going to take one more short little ad break, and when we come back, we're going to talk briefly about Palace's game against Newcastle. So don't go away. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every day, every club, every day. I managed to somehow muck that up for the end. This is, sorry, apologies to my to listeners who can't see this. I haven't got my glasses on, and I rather stupidly have left them in another room. So I've just made a mess of that podcast read. So
I think it sounded better. I
sorry,
like
sorry to the podcast overlords. I'll be reprimanded straight away after this. Welcome back to the Daily Palace podcast. I'm joined by Alex Way. Unfortunately, I think Wale is not going to be rejoining us for his stint, which is a shame because looking forward to hearing his thoughts. Yeah, it's been great podcast so far. So Palace's next game is against Newcastle. So you mentioned Alexander Isak in the last part, Alex. What are your thoughts? Do you feel optimistic going into this game, or do you feel that again Palace would do well to get a point from this at least? Is it a case now where Palace are just going to have to scramble for every possible point, or are you more relaxed? What are your thoughts?
I think it'll be a really scrappy game, if I'm honest. Like Newcastle they're a bit of a team that gets up people and puts the challenges about, and they're quite physical. Like Joel Linton in the middle is just like a unit. So I'm quite excited. I'm excited in some ways to see him versus Bakare. Now Bakare's back. That's going to be a midfield battle for the ages, I think. But yeah, they're such a dangerous team, man. Like, yeah, Isak, obviously, goal scoring record speaks for itself. Then they've got Anthony Gordon, Harvey Barnes, just like unreal players who are at the top of their game at the moment. So we've got to be really cautious. But we turned them over last year at home, right? And they are the kind of team that has got a dodgy performance in them. And we just got to hope that comes on Saturday. You know, they got beaten by West Ham last night quite convincingly. And I think that will give us confidence that we can do similar at Selhurst Park. Just like, sorry to bring it up again, but considering how we played against Fulham at home before the international break, I'm not trying to give you PTSD or anything, mate.
Listen, the only way is up from here. I mean, I think the sad thing is I wasn't overtly surprised. I think just from years of watching Crystal Palace, even though it was probably the worst we've played this season, it's not the worst I've ever seen us. And it's just like, I just sat there and just going like, yeah, it's about right.
Yeah, we have like a couple of those a season. Under Roy, it was like every other third game or something, you'd have a game like that. But yeah, against Newcastle, I just want to see a bit more positivity, like how we were against Spurs, you know, putting the tackles in, getting the crowd up for it. You know, playing on the front foot a bit. We've got players back now. Eze is supposed to be back Saturday. Our squad's coming back together. So you want to see that click a bit. Yeah, like I said earlier, I want to see Devaney start in because he brings something, a boost to the crowd. Against Fulham, and he was like one of our better players. So yeah, just, you know, a bit more positivity. I think if we come out again with a point, again, it's progress. Like Newcastle were very good. So I think for those games, you have to come away with something. just any losses at this point, we're in disaster, man. Like, I know it's a bit overkill to say that, but it is that stage. Like, if you lose, you're 5 points behind, then you're 8 points behind. All of a sudden, you lose sight. So yeah, a point would be fine.
I think, as you said, I think we're running out of breathing room. I think it's okay initially to not have great results, but then when the other teams around you in that position start to pick up results, as Wolves did, for example, at the weekend, it becomes a bit concerning. But I'm also very confident that Glasner will steer the guys in the right direction. And I think as well with the defence as well, particularly, it will just click eventually. I think we've got quite a good squad depth in terms of our central defenders. And I'm really hopeful that when Eddie Nketiah returns and is fit, he'll be able to get a few goals as well. So, yeah, fingers crossed. Also, I can never remember his name. You might know this, Alex. Who's the assistant at Newcastle? It's weird that we talk about someone's assistant.
Jason Tyndall.
Jason Tyndall.
Yeah. He's the he's a bit of a character, isn't he? So
right.
Eddie Howe's quite chilled and reserved, and then he's like spouting off all the time.
He is. He likes to give it a bit, doesn't he? He likes to sort of, I don't know, he's a bit of a proverbial stirrer. I was trying to think of the best way to navigate that phrase.
I like we've now replaced it with proverbial.
Basically, just needs a big wooden spoon, right? So,
yeah.
But yeah, it'd be interesting because, as you said, I think they're a very physical team. So I think Palace are definitely going to have to match them in that sense. And yeah, but here's hoping. As now, I'm going to bring it up after the Fulham game. The only way is up. The only way is up from here, unless we get relegated, which is literally going down. But
it could happen. It could happen, unfortunately.
It'd be very nice. But well, I'm hopeful it won't get to that point. I want to say a massive thank you to Alex Waite for joining me tonight.
No worries, Finn. Been a pleasure as always, mate. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No worries. I also want to thank Wale Bakare for his brief intro at the beginning. I think we've sadly lost him in the podcast abyss.
If you listen closely, you can hear him from Nigeria saying, "Thanks, guys."
This is who I think you should sign in January. Cheers to Wale as well for jumping on. And thank you to you guys as well, listeners, and keep your ears posted over the next few days and weeks for your Palace news and info from us. Goodbye and ta-ra.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.